everyone, and welcome to a new season of our Lunchtime lecture series. This season, our theme is stories about science. Literally, we are inviting authors and other speakers to talk about their books, share their research, and tell stories of science or the history of science. I'm Naomi Gonzalez, the Education and Interpretation Specialist at the Science History Institute, and it's my honor today to introduce our speaker, Dr. Meagan Allen. Before I do, though, I'll say a bit about the new format of our series. So the Lunchtime Lecture Series is now digital. It premieres on the Institute's YouTube channel with a new season every fall and spring. Today, Meagan will speak for about 25 to 30 minutes, after which there'll be a 15-minute Q&A. If you, the viewer, have any questions, feel free to interact with us on social media. You can find us at scihistory.org on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Now, let me introduce you to our speaker. Meagan S. Allen is the Kane Postdoctoral Fellow at the Science History Institute. She received her PhD from the Department of History and Philosophy of Science and Medicine at Indiana University in 2021. Her research focuses on the intersection of alchemy and pharmacology in the 13th century, specifically in the works of Roger Bacon. So welcome, Meagan. Thank you so much for joining us today, and take it away.
Hi, Naomi, and thank you to the Science History Institute for inviting me to give a talk for the Lunchtime Lecture Series. So as Naomi mentioned today, I'm going to talk about my current research project, which is a book on Roger Bacon's medical alchemy. So to start off, I'll answer the question, who is Roger Bacon and why should we care about his alchemy? So Roger Bacon was born to a wealthy family in Somerset during the second decade of the 13th century. As a youth, he was educated in England and then moved to Paris, where he lectured on Aristotelian natural philosophy at the university. Around the age of 40, he decided it was time for a change in career and returned to Oxford and joined the Franciscan order. The Franciscans were an order of mendicant friars founded by St. Francis of Assisi in 1209, only a few years before Bacon's birth. Founded at a time when the Pope was trying to stamp out heresies in southwestern Europe, the order traveled across Europe, preaching to communities. Despite their often itinerant status, Franciscans were deeply devoted to learning, especially in subjects such as mathematics, which could be used as proof of divine action and causality. We don't know exactly why Bacon decided to join the Franciscans, but we do know that he was unusually old. Most friars joined when they were much younger. Exact details of his life are unclear, but his personal accounts and contemporary evidence suggest that he moved between the Franciscan orders of Oxford and Paris for the next few decades. He died in 1292 and was buried at the city's old friary. Over the past 700 years, his reputation has grown and changed, and he has been seen as everything from a magician capable of summoning demons, a lone supporter of science in an intellectual void, to a pinnacle of English alchemical thought. Known today as the Dr. Mirabilis, he was in many ways innovative in his ideas, but still firmly grounded within 13th century scholasticism. My research focuses on the period between roughly 1260 and 1290, the years in which he was a Franciscan. Like many within his order, Bacon was very interested in mathematics and the related subjects of perspective, geometry, and optics, and was the author of several influential works on the subject. However, he was also interested in many other areas of what today we would call science, including agriculture, astronomy, and cartography, among others. But one of the most important areas of science was medicine. Medicine was one of the most important areas that could be studied because it taught about the nature of the human body, which, in medieval thought, was superior to all other things in this world. Medieval theology and natural philosophy taught that God had made mankind in his own image, and so any practice that cared for the human body was especially noble and worthy of study. Specifically, Bacon was interested in the practice of alchemical pharmacology, or the creation of superior drugs using alchemical techniques. He believed that these medicines could not only heal patients more effectively and with fewer side effects, but could also, in some cases, reverse the effects of aging and extend human life. My work focuses on three major research questions. The first, what is alchemy to Bacon? How did Bacon think that alchemy could be applied to the art of medicine? And what exactly were the physiological effects that Bacon imagined his alchemically prepared medicines would have on the body? The second question, where does Bacon's approach to the use of alchemy fall within the context of 13th century medical culture? Was Bacon influenced by the translations of new medical works or evolving ideas about the processes of disease and aging? And was Bacon himself influential? And the third question is, to what extent were Bacon's beliefs on the possibility of prolonging human life shaped by his Franciscan beliefs and training? So I don't want to spoil the whole book for you. So for the rest of the talk, I'm just going to focus on the first research question, and more specifically, what are alchemical medicines and how did Bacon think they worked? Like many of his contemporaries, Bacon believed that there were two types of decay, natural and accidental. Accidental decay leads to the current lifespan of 70 to 80 years, while natural decay leads to a much longer lifespan. Bacon saw no fundamental difference between natural and accidental decay. Additionally, as the decay of 13th century man was accidental and not mandated by God or nature, it was remediable, thus allowing Bacon to claim that life could be extended. Because it was the result of human failings rather than divine laws, it could be remedied using human sciences and tools. And I should note that while the mean lifespan in the Middle Ages was less than it is today, that was greatly skewed by the high rates of infant mortality. So Bacon is not incorrect, or we should not be surprised when Bacon says that the average life expectancy for an individual should be around 70 years, assuming they survive past adolescence. But, and here's the really important part, humans should not be dying at 70. Even before Bacon started writing about his alchemical medicines, it was generally accepted that people in the past lived much longer lives than they did in the present. Figures from the Old Testament, such as Noah and Adam, had lived to be several hundred years old. According to many of the followers of this belief, including Bacon, this was the natural state of mankind. This is what the natural decay leads to. It was only because of the accidental decay that people lived such short lives. According to Bacon, human life had been significantly shortened since the beginning of the world. When God created Adam, he gave Adam's body the potential to be sustained forever by eating the fruit from the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. If Adam had not been expelled from paradise, he would have lived forever. However, after Adam was expelled, he lost access to the fruit of the tree of life, and so was doomed to suffer bodily decay and eventually death. However, God, being merciful, gave Adam certain tools so that he would not die immediately. These included the recipes for alchemically prepared medicines, but also the regimen of health, which teaches how to preserve the body through regulating things such as diet, exercise, and sleeping. So at first, the sons and grandsons of Adam were able to follow this regimen and preserve their health, leading to their extraordinarily long lives, as documented in the Old Testament. Methuselah, the grandfather of Noah, lived to be 969 years. However, as time passed and the wickedness of men grew, the average lifespan shortened significantly until it reached 70 or 80 years, what Bacon considers to be the absolute minimum lifespan for humans. So men have lost the knowledge of the regimen of health, and they've also lost the knowledge of these alchemical medicines. And with each new generation, the errors of the previous generation are compounded. So this is the condition that Bacon believes men are in the 13th century. They've lost all knowledge of and ability to follow the regimen of health, and so live pathetically short lives, in his estimation. Bacon believed that alchemy taught how to sustain the body, restore health, and prolong human life. And by properly preparing these alchemical medicines, Bacon thought that it was possible to prolong life by several hundred years, even outliving Methuselah himself. So in theory, the art of medicine should be able to extend human life, but in practice, it cannot because doctors are ignorant of alchemy. In his more mature works on the subject, Bacon divided alchemy into two types, practical and speculative. This is not unique to alchemy. Bacon divided most branches of knowledge into practical and speculative parts based on the division utilized by the 6th century scholar Boethius. In the medical context, practical alchemy taught how to take medicines and make them safer and more efficacious. Many medicines contained harmful components, and the alchemical techniques provided the means of removing these materials, leaving only the beneficial aspects. Here, Bacon envisioned using the techniques, or what he calls the keys of alchemy, such as distillation, sublimation, and resolution, among others. And you may notice that a lot of these terms are still used in chemistry today. So speculative alchemy, on the other hand, taught about the generation of all things from the 4 elements. Since the ancient Greeks, people believed that there were 4 classical elements: air, water, earth, and fire, and these combined together. Bacon believed that they combined together to form what he calls the 4 simple humors, which are blood, phlegm, bile, and melancholy. So each humor contains all 4 elements, but is dominated by one, and that determines its characteristics. The 4 simple humors then combined in a similar manner to form the 4 complex humors, which Bacon conveniently also calls blood, phlegm, bile, and melancholy. When physicians spoke of the 4 humors, they're referring to the 4 complex humors. So if you've heard of humoral medicine, this is what we're talking about. All things in the sublunary world, organic and inorganic, were made from the 4 simple humors: people, plants, rocks, everything. Speculative alchemy thus taught not only about the generation of the human body, but about the generation of all things and how they interact. Bacon believed that speculative alchemy, when combined with practical alchemy, allowed one to separate the constituent elements and recombine them in new proportions, thus altering the substance. Speculative alchemy also taught about the incorruptibility of substances. To Bacon, incorruptibility of materials comes from a corpus equale, or a body of equal complexion. In such a body, all of the elements would be in perfect proportion, not by weight but by their strength, and thus the body would not decay. There were 3 ways to get this equal complexion: gold, which already has it in nature; through the resurrection body, which will be given after the Last Judgment; and through alchemy and experimental science. This meant that, in theory, alchemy could teach how to make a body incorruptible, thus extending human life. Much of Bacon's interest in alchemical theories and their application to medicine came from reading the pseudo-Avicennian De Anima. However, Bacon's understanding of how incorruptibility occurred signified a significant break from this tradition, which taught that all things on earth have their own ratio of the elements. Each of these were physical substances able to be isolated from each other and recombined in different proportions. Where Bacon differs from De Anima is that he applies this theory to human medicine while also significantly expanding upon it and incorporating themes from other sources. If the elixir from De Anima is applied to humans, then a hypothetical patient who has a humoral quality of, say, 0.3 to 0.7 to 0.4 to 0.1, that is 0.3 blood, 0.7 bile, 0.4 phlegm, and 1 melancholy, would have to take a remedy of a simple or compound drug that had a qualitative composition of 0.7 to 0.3 to 0.6 to 0. This would create a balanced system of 1 to 1 to 1 to 1, where the balance of humors is restored and the patient returns to a state of health. But this means that for every person or every disease, There must be a specific remedy with opposing qualities that can balance out the patient's humors. Bacon, on the other hand, believes that there's a universal medicine for health and turns the elixir found in De Anima into a corpus equale that was itself incorruptible, as its elements were in perfect proportion already, a ratio of 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. Not only could such a medicine be used on any person of any complexion to restore their bodies to health, it could also be used to, quote, heal metals, as the state of incorruptibility was identical for both animate and inanimate objects. Remember, all things are made from the 4 elements. All that was required was that the elements be in perfect proportion by weight, so that there would be no action of one upon the other. So here we see an example of Bacon's ability to synthesize ideas from a multitude of sources to create a program uniquely his own. This idea of a medicine that restores the qualitative elemental balance from De Anima, the incorruptibility of the resurrection body of the Bible, the possibility of delaying the aging process from the work on the slowing of the accidents of old age, the importance of an equal complexion, and of course, the Galenic and Greek medical literature that based human health on the balance of the 4 humors. The idea of a corpus equale is central to Bacon's understanding of how alchemy can serve medicine. Alchemy provides the tools for creating a corpus equale, which can then cure any disease, thus obviating the need for diagnoses. Additionally, as the corpus equale is found in the resurrection body, a body cured by the corpus equale will approximate, though not reach, a state similar to the body after the resurrection. I have argued that Bacon believes a body of equal complexion is able to pass its equality on to a recipient body through the multiplication of its species. According to this theory, which Bacon says explains every natural process, a body is able to send out its force or species. These species then change the matter of the recipient body, causing it to become something akin to the agent. This is not an emanation from the agent, but rather an activation of the potentiality of the matter of the recipient. So in more basic terms, if we think of a fire would be the body, and the fire sends out its species when it comes in contact with something like a dry log. And the species of fire activate the potentiality of the log to itself become fire, and this is how fire spreads among logs. So it's a pretty simple concept in theory. As Bacon said that God has decreed that only certain things, such as the element of fire, are able to have a complete transformative effect on the matter of the recipient, he's able to claim that a medicine composed of a corpus equale cannot extend human life indefinitely, thus allowing for death. And this is an important point that I'd like to make, and that's no medieval philosopher in the Latin West believed that you could extend human life indefinitely. There was no idea that you could find or reach immortality through alchemy in the Middle Ages. So the question now becomes, what kinds of medicines could contain this corpus equale, and how could alchemy be used to prepare them? Most medicines in the 13th century were either simple, that is, a single ingredient, or compounds made from a mixture of simple ingredients. Many of the simples were plant materials, and there was often a great overlap between medicine and diet. Unlike simple medicines, which only used one ingredient, compound medicines combined 2 or more ingredients. But if simple medicines existed, then why were compound medicines needed? Bacon provided 3 reasons. The first, compound medicines were good because 2 singles could have 2 operations in each type of disease. The second, 1 single could not necessarily provide all that is needed, so it must be supplemented. And 3, compound medicines could cure different parts of a disease or even multiple diseases. The 12th century pharmacist Matthias Blaetarius offered similar reasons. Some illnesses themselves are compounded and thus cannot be treated by one medicine, as one medicine cannot have different effects on different imbalances. Additionally, he said, compound medicines can be used against multiple diseases and then can incorporate ingredients that preserve the medicine, make it more palatable, and repress any harmful properties that an ingredient might have. Many physicians believed that compound medicines worked because of the powers granted through its specific form, rather than from the simple addition of the individual powers of its ingredients. The process of fermentation was what gave it the additional powers from its own form that were not present in any of the ingredients. Bacon was very interested in the action of fermentation and its effects of compound medicines. Borrowing from Avicenna, Bacon said that compound medicines were only useful after they had been properly fermented. Again, it was not as simple as combining the natures of simples to produce a compound medicine. The act of fermentation provides a different composition and property than the medicine would have on its own. The difficulty arose from the fact that not all compound medicines required the same length of fermentation. Physicians were ignorant of this, and so they don't give their patients effective medicines. So here's how the specific form works. If you have medicine A that cures disease X and medicine B that cures disease Y, if you properly ferment the two to produce medicine C can cure not only diseases X and Y, which were covered by A and B, but can also cure disease Z. So medicine C has additional powers that are greater than A's and B's combined. To Bacon, one of the most important alchemically prepared compound medicines was what he called the Gloria Inestimopolis, the inestimable glory. He wrote about it throughout his career. References appear in his glosses and introduction to the pseudo-Aristotelian Secretum Secretorum, or the Secret of Secrets, Bacon's own Opus Tertium, and his work on pharmacology, The Errors of the Doctors. That it was a constant in his evolving idea of the prolongation of life should be some indication of how important a remedy it is. Bacon writes about it for over 30 years. Supposedly praised by Aristotle to Alexander, this was the greatest of medicines, the secret of secrets. The fullest description of the Gloria Inestimopolis appears in the main text of the Secret of Secrets, although Bacon's glosses on this section are numerous and detailed as well. According to the recipe provided, which is remarkably complete, even providing the necessary weights of ingredients, the Gloria Inestimopolis is a compound medicine composed of 8 individual medicines, themselves compounds, mixed together, then finished using alchemy and astronomy. Each of the 8 medicines relies on the same base, a honey mixture made of sweet and sour pomegranates, sour apples, sweet grapes, and sugar. The ingredients for each medicine are added together, fermented in water, and then boiled until thickened. So as you can see on the slide, these medicines are potent on their own. Each of the 8 medicines has a specific area of the body that it targets should it be given alone. There are 3 important points to note regarding the ingredients, preparation, and use of the 8 individual medicines. The first point is that none of these ingredients are particularly strange or out of place in 13th century medicine. Certainly, some of them are exotic. Tabashir, for instance, is a silica compound made from the notes of bamboo shoots, and spikenard comes from Eastern Asia. These would have relied on extensive trade networks and probably would have been expensive, but none are unusual. They all appear in other contemporary recipes. The second point is that the method of preparation is incredibly simple. Each medicine requires that the ingredients be combined in the correct proportion, then soaked in water to ferment, and then finally boiled down until they have been thickened. Aside from the occasional grinding of seeds or juicing of roots, they don't actually require any highly technical methods, like the ones Bacon suggests in his work on pharmacology on the errors of the doctors. The third and final point is that on their own, these medicines don't have any marvelous properties. They do not claim to have a body of equal complexion, nor do they have the ability to remove all diseases or prolong life. When combined together, however, that is exactly what the medicines are able to do. The 9th medicine, the Gloria Inestimopolis, is the final end of all medicines. To make this final medicine, One has to combine the 8 individual medicines with fresh tamarind that has been dissolved in water. Pour rose water over the mixture, then boil it until thickened. After it is cooled, add balsam, ambergris, and musk. After all of the organic ingredients have been added, one must add powdered pearls, powdered rubies, powdered emerald, and powdered gold. Although inorganic, these materials were often found in medicines for wealthy patients. And here is where the Gloria Inestimopolis breaks from the medicines you could buy at any apothecary. The final steps are to, quote, put the whole mixture in a porcelain pot, or better still, in a golden vessel, previously scented with the incense of aloe. Then place the vessel under the sky for a week, so that the heavenly powers may affect it with their influence. And this quote demonstrates how alchemy and astronomy are incorporated into the Gloria Inestimopolis, and is remarkably similar to the description of the medicine contained in another one of Bacon's works, the Liber Sextientiarum. Astronomy teaches that when the heavens are in beneficial locations, Perspectiva shows how to congregate the stellar rays using tools such as mirrors, and alchemy teaches how to combine the ingredients in the proper manner. In some ways, there is a parallel between the Gloria Inestimopolis and its 8 constituent medicines, and a compound medicine and its constituent simples. Both the simples and the 8 medicines are prepared correctly, compounded, and allowed to ferment until their own specific natures have been destroyed and replaced with the specific nature of the Gloria Inestimopolis, or compound medicine, which has powers greater than the sum of its parts. Once complete, 1 dose of the medicine must be taken before and after eating. If used correctly, it will remove excess humors and heat, repel inflammations, temper complexions, aid the muscles, clarify vision, remove pain, slow aging, strengthen the voice, and quiet all visible and hidden diseases. Additionally, it will relieve flatulence, prevent humors from collecting and pus from forming, impede natural weaknesses, aid in respiration, generate joy, and finally, generate intellect and provide nutriments to the brain. This idea that the Gloria Inestimopolis, or other medicines prepared by humans, can not only improve the body but also intelligence is found elsewhere in Bacon, notably in the Liber Sextientiarum. And though the author of The Secret of Secrets does not claim that the Gloria Inestimopolis has the ability to prolong human life to its natural limits, Bacon does just that. So, though difficult to make, Bacon claimed that the Gloria Inestimopolis has a long history of use. Even more remarkable is that Bacon claimed that not only is it still being produced, but he's actually seen it work. He said that he once saw a doctor prepare it and give it to the second most powerful man in France after the king. The Gloria Inestimopolis not only cured his debilitating physical ailments, but also made him a happier, wiser, and more generous ruler. Though Bacon did not take the Gloria Inestimopolis himself, he had experienced its power and was thus certain of its effects. The powers of the Gloria Inestimopolis were nothing short of marvelous. I've argued that it's central to Bacon's understanding of the prolongation of life for 4 reasons. First, it is the ultimate manifestation of the idea that the human body has the possibility to be immoral. Second, it's a medicine that anyone could make, including the doctors, if only they could learn the proper alchemical techniques involved. Third, it shows Bacon's reliance on orthodox medical ideas, such as the theory that a compound medicine had powers greater than the sum of its parts. And finally, it incorporates all of the sciences that Bacon repeatedly stressed are central to medicine: alchemy, astronomy, and experimental science. So another remedy containing a corpus equale is gold. Gold, of course, exists in nature, but comes in different grades of quality. Pure gold of 24 grades, what we could call 24 carats, is incorruptible, while gold of lesser grades can be corrupted, but also perfected. Both artificial and natural gold that had been prepared using the alchemical techniques of calcination and dissolution could be added to food and drink and then converted into human nature, just like any other food or drink. But if one did not have natural gold, alchemy and experimental science taught one how to make it. One of the longest descriptions of this process is in Bacon's Opus Minus. If done correctly, one will achieve the perfect medicine, this corpus equale. So alchemy was also an effective tool in producing medicines that would work without a corpus equale. It could improve the medicines that were sold by apothecaries. As I mentioned earlier, Bacon believed that most pharmaceuticals contained gross material in addition to their therapeutic aspects. Doctors did not know how to remove the gross aspects, but those who studied alchemy did. Two powerful examples of this, taken from Bacon's work on the errors of the doctors, are rhubarb and viper's flesh. Though they may sound strange to us, both were popular simple medicines whose use dated back to antiquity. Snake flesh, for instance, was renowned for its ability to remove poison from the body. Bacon, while not opposed to the use of snake flesh, was worried about the venomous properties of snakes. The techniques taught in practical alchemy could separate the venomous aspects of snake flesh from the therapeutic. Medicines using viper's flesh that had undergone resolution were safer for the patient and could be given with more certainty as to their effects. Like viper's flesh, rhubarb could be dangerous if given whole, but the benefits one received from it, especially in purging phlegm and restoring the natural heat of the body, far outweighed its detriments. Thus, it was important that the earthly or poisonous substance be removed and the patient receive only the virtue. The idea of separating virtues from gross material is also found in an earlier 13th century work, The Slowing of the Accidents of Old Age, and may be a source of inspiration for Bacon. But unlike Bacon, who thought that alchemy can prepare any body, the author of The Slowing of the Accidents of Old Age thought that virtues could not be separated from the body of, quote, dense substances. Like stones, these had to be powdered down. Separation was important because the process of separation happened naturally in the human body during digestion, but required a great deal of energy, sometimes more than the person was able to spend. By pre-separating the gross from the virtuous, the physician saved the body a step and helps conserve energy. But doctors do not know how to separate virtues, Bacon says, and so they do a disservice to their patients. Even when the substance was not poisonous, it could be improved using alchemy. Resolution and distillation could be used to extract the most potent parts of any medicine, such as the oils from plants. And in particular, I'm thinking of rose oil. Now, like most of his medicines, Bacon does not describe his personal use with these remedies, but they remain central to his idea of the prolongation of life. So why does he believe that they've worked if he's never tried them himself? And there are two reasons that I'd like to argue. The first is that he has it on authority that they should exist. He's heard stories of men who have been able to prolong their lives using these medicines. He's seen the Gloria Inestimopolis at work. And so his experience is not just individual experience, but the experience of others as well. And the second reason is that Bacon believes that these operate by the laws of nature. And so they have to work because the laws of nature are unchangeable and can't be altered. They always have to work in the same way. Anything that works using these laws of nature, such as a corpus equale, must also work as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this little insight into Bacon's medical alchemy. If you're interested, the book will have many more discussions of cool and sometimes crazy medicines that Bacon uses, and really just puts Bacon within the context of the 13th century, which he's tended to have been removed from in previous scholarship.
Well, thank you, Megan. That was really eye-opening and really fantastic. The idea of rhubarb being part of a medicine is hilarious to me now, but we know that during that time, that's kind of like, it's experimental, but also there's actual real kind of science, that they know at the time to back that up. So it's really fun to learn more about that. So I appreciate you sharing a lot of your research and kind of what you're doing with your book. But I have so many questions. So I'm not really familiar with Roger Bacon himself, or the time period he's in and kind of what he's focusing on. But what I found interesting was how often God and religion is kind of intermixed with these alchemical recipes for these medicines. So I'm curious if that's unique for this period, especially for alchemists around this time. Are there other recipes from other people during this period that kind of also intertwine this kind of religion with alchemy, or is Bacon kind of unique in that sense?
It's a good question. No, he's not unique. So pretty much everyone, I mean, this is a very religiously hegemonic society. There's everyone is Catholic. Well, not everyone is Catholic, but most people are Catholic. That's taught, and theology and natural philosophy go hand in hand. Natural philosophy is often seen as a way of understanding God, so we can understand God through his creations in the natural world. So Bacon is very much within his time by being influenced by religious ideas, especially the idea of a resurrection body. So yeah, there are plenty of other recipes that not necessarily recipes, but there are plenty of other medical texts and alchemical texts that rely on religious scripture and religious ideas. Especially this idea that human lifespan has been significantly shortened since the time of the biblical patriarchs. Almost everyone believes that. That's a universally accepted idea.
Yeah, I just found that really, really interesting, especially if we look at kind of like modern science and modern religion and religious beliefs. There's so many that believe, one thing or the other. You can't have science and God, or you can't have God and science. But here, during this period, it's so kind of perfectly intertwined. So I found that so interesting, because there's no reason why you can't believe both. I don't know how much one will be influenced by the other in the 21st century, but there's no reason why the beliefs can't inspire or play off the other. So I just found that really, really interesting.
Definitely. Yeah. One of the themes that I'm also exploring in the book is just how much Bacon's training as a Franciscan is influencing his own ideas. Because as I say, there's a lot of ideas, especially that, human life has been shortened, but also that the resurrection body will be immortal and it will be a physical body. These are all standard ideas that everybody has. But Bacon does have some unique ideas. So how much are his ideas being influenced by the Franciscans of Oxford and Paris is another part of the book.
Yeah, I'd be really interested once the book comes out to kind of look more into that, because the Franciscan order, I want to say, not everyone is familiar with maybe their history, but everyone's familiar with St. Francis of Assisi. So they're familiar with the order and the idea of Bacon being a part of this order and then coming out with these kinds of medical texts and this natural alchemy and things like that, I think is really, really interesting. A lot of it actually reminded me of some things that I think, most people might be familiar with even now. I mean, science and kind of medicines have grown and changed as the science itself has changed over the last few hundred years. But the idea of like using peppermint or having peppermint tea if you have like an upset stomach, or the properties of ginger and turmeric and what that can do in the body. And then I'm thinking of even something like, the different Chinese herbs that you can use for different things. So some of that is still kind of present in what we do in the 21st century. And it, people, eucalyptus oil or eucalyptus in general being used to like open up the sinuses. So some of that stuff is carried over in very different ways, but it's less science and more, home based, or kind of just, I read it on the internet and I'm going to try it kind of based. So it's interesting how some of those things stayed, but they've fallen out of kind of the medical field by over the last few hundred years.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of drugs today, a lot of drugs that you get from the pharmacy that they came from compounds that are synthesized in plants. So even if we don't say go out and chew on the bark of a certain tree to relieve pain or nausea, the compounds that you might find in aspirin, or specifically in certain heart medicines, were originally synthesized in plants, and scientists studied the plants and then built the medicines from there.
Yeah, and I don't know that a lot of people are aware of that either, because I think, when they hear, compounds and medicines and science, they might have an idea that it's very synthetic, and not that a lot of current medications are synthesized from plants. And a lot of that information was passed down from practitioners like Bacon and others from hundreds of years ago, who wrote down, what they used and what it was for and how it helped. And, there's evidence of the time that it worked. So a lot of that information still kind of came down, but now it's like, it's in a pill as opposed to being, mixed with some kind of gold or something like that, so I don't know that people realize that some of that information, like, we know what plants to synthesize for this because it's been used in different centuries, but also in different parts of the world as well. And a lot of that knowledge kind of came down. So it's really interesting to hear how Bacon is kind of writing these things down, and how inspired, from the natural world and his, beliefs possibly, and things like that. So I just found that all really, really interesting. The idea of not prolonging life, because from what I know personally from alchemy, is kind of, I would say, before Bacon's time, where other alchemists in other parts of the world are looking for, like, the philosopher's stone, right? We're trying to create this one thing using different properties and different alchemical processes to create an elixir of life that will, prolong life forever. And, that's clearly changed by the time we get to Bacon's, by the time we get to the 13th century, where Bacon is practicing and writing these recipes. But the idea of gold still kind of sticks with both, because gold was like one of the premier ingredients to use to make this kind of elixir. And here with Bacon, it still seems to be something to use for one of the medicines. So it's interesting how it's grown. We're trying to prolong life, but not trying to make us immortal, but gold is still kind of a really important part of that. Especially the idea of 24 karat being kind of like the perfect kind of gold. I just thought that was really, really interesting, and it clicked with, the few things of earlier alchemy that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, well, I get more into it in the book, but Bacon actually says you can, 24 karat gold is obviously the best, but you can actually make gold of even 30 to 40 carats. So you can improve on the best using alchemy. So I don't want to spoil it, but I do talk a little more about how exactly he thinks that can happen and what the difference is between these two, 24 karat gold and 40 karat gold, which are both supposedly the best and incorruptible. Well, if they're both the best and incorruptible, how can they be different? But clearly they are. So yeah, I'm not a scholar of Middle Eastern or East Asian alchemy, but yeah, in the Western tradition, there's never really this idea that you can prolong life to immortality, because again, that would be heretical, and so no one is going to claim that they can live forever, because to claim that you can live forever is basically to negate Christ dying on the cross. And again, as I say, this is a very Christian society, and so no one is going to risk saying that they can live forever, because that would be heretical. Yeah. But yeah, the idea that gold is always this incorruptible body, and if you look at it, it's pretty hard to destroy gold. You can throw it in the fire and it doesn't really change. It doesn't rust. It doesn't oxidize like steel or copper. It's a cool metal, so it does kind of deserve this place.
Yeah, and I can also understand, because of that, why it's popular in use for different kind of alchemical recipes or experimentations by alchemists over the centuries, because it is this perfect metal, and they're, what can we do with it if it's already, what can we perfect something else if we add it, add gold to it or something like that. So I just thought that was really, really interesting. And gives me a new appreciation for some of the gold jewelry that I have. I don't plan on making any kind of alchemical recipes, but now, I could look at my gold and be like, you are perfect. And I appreciate your existence.
So gold is actually still used in some medicines today.
Is it really? That's interesting.
So gold does have some anti-inflammatory properties. And so certain drugs for rheumatoid arthritis contain gold compounds in them.
Interesting. Wow. I had no idea.
You can still get gold in medicine today.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I had no idea. Yeah. You see, and the groundwork was laid. It was laid hundreds of years ago.
It was all there. Yeah.
It was already all there. So just some final questions, mostly about your research. I'm really interested in, obviously you're looking at a lot of what Bacon himself has written, but I'm interested in, are you looking at any other kinds of recipes? Are you looking at anyone else in the period? Is there anything to compare or contrast to? Have you found anything really, really cool that you were just so excited to find while you were researching that, we'll see when the book comes out? Just really interested in kind of the research process behind your book.
Yeah, I mostly focus on Bacon, but as I said, part of the problem is that especially during the 20th century, the early part of the 20th century, Bacon was studied as if he were working in a vacuum, and he's removed from the 13th century. And, part of this was this idea in the 20th century that medieval scholasticism was essentially an intellectual void. There was no science. It was all religion, which of course is not true. And so in the past, 5 or so decades, historians of science have been working to put the intellectual history back in the Middle Ages, which is very important. And so that's part of the story. I see myself as contributing to that work, specifically with Bacon. I'm putting him back in the context of the 13th century. And so I do look at 13th century recipes, 13th century alchemy. There's not a lot of medical alchemy at this point. Bacon's really one of the first in the Latin West. So I'm mostly looking at compound medicines, especially ones that contain similar ingredients, to see how they are thought to work and contrasting that with how Bacon thinks they work. I'm really interested in the physiological effect that medicine has on the body, or the physiological effect that medicine is perceived to have on the body with the 4 humors. So one of the really interesting things that will be in the book is I have a discussion on alcohol. And because around this time, alcohol begins to be used as a medical treatment, especially in things like eye washes. So he would distill hard alcohol and use it to, rinse out eyes and, cleanse the stomach, all sorts of things. And it's getting really popular at this point, and a lot of people write about it, and Bacon does not.
Interesting.
And so, especially because distillation is considered an alchemical technique, why is Bacon not interested in alcohol? And so I talk a lot about this in the book as well, but I don't want to spoil that. I want people to read it.
Just leave little crumbs, because that is really interesting. Why, if other people, contemporaries, are looking into this, and he's like, no, I'd rather. Yeah. I wonder. So many, again, not knowing much about Bacon himself, my first thought is it not a pure enough substance, or is it something to do with the belief system around it? Does he view alcohol differently? Because personally, in the 21st century, I would not, distilled or not, I would not put alcohol anywhere near my eyes. A lot of people believe, there's that great meme going around from a TV show that's like, alcohol helps to heal the inside wounds and the outside wounds. And maybe there's some connection there, but yeah, I'm interested to see why he doesn't, but I'm also curious as to what some of the other recipes involving distilled alcohol would be like. What else are people using it for? Because too much is not great for the stomach. So exactly, like, what are you distilling it with? How much are you consuming? But then it also reminds me of, parents or grandparents who were like, if you have a teething baby, just, dab your finger in whiskey and kind of put it along their gums to numb the pain. So clearly some of that has passed down as well. So that's very interesting, which leads really to the most important question is, do we have the time frame? Do we know when or kind of close to when the book will be out, so we can keep our eye out for it?
Well, we're in the process of negotiations with publishers, so I would say hopefully soon, but I can't give an exact date.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll wish you luck on the process of writing. I know a lot of authors out there understand that it's very interesting and fulfilling, but also very frustrating sometimes to write and have to do edits and kill your darlings, as they say. Maybe not everything makes it into the book. Yeah. So I wish you luck with that, and definitely everyone out there, make sure you keep your eye out for the book when it comes out. The Science History Institute, once we know for sure, we'll definitely share that on all our social media channels to make sure you stay up to date and can grab the book and learn more about Roger Bacon and his medical alchemy, learn more about rhubarb, and answer those questions about alcohol use in medicines and why Bacon chooses not to do it. So thank you so much, Meagan, for joining us today. Really excited to have you. Really looking forward to the book. We'll say our final goodbyes to Meagan, but it won't be the last time we see you, I'm sure. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Thank you. And we'll have a great day. And we'll see you soon once you're out of the writing phase.
Absolutely. I'll be back.
All right. To hear more from the Science History Institute, including updates on all of our programs and events, make sure you follow us online. We are scihistory.org on the major social media channels like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure you follow us there for any updates and for our next speaker and for more information on the next session of the series. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you really enjoyed it, and have a great day. Bye, guys.